Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mormon Newscast. It is Monday night, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and it is January 12th, 2026. I have to give a birthday shout out to my Mormonish co-host, Landon. It is his birthday. If you see him, wish him a happy birthday. It's also my dad's birthday. He's passed away a couple years ago, but happy birthday, Dad. I am joined this evening by my wonderful co-host, Radio Free Mormon, and Bill Reel. Do either of you know someone who has a birthday today?
No. Of course, now if I do, then I'm really going to get in trouble. And I just forgot. Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, I feel like I outed you, and I'm really sorry. I think you should do this. Happy birthday. You know who you are, right? That kind of covers everybody.
You're so clever.
No, I'm diabolical. I am. Anyway, welcome to the newscast, everybody. This is our second broadcast in 2026, and every week so far has just been jam-packed with things that have happened. So much news that we've had to cut stories and leave them on the cutting room floor. But we think that we're bringing you the curated stories that are the most important this week. And there have been quite a bit. So let's pull up the slides and I will let you guys know what we're going to be talking about tonight.
It's called Unlock Your Loins. What does that mean?
And I'll tell you that that was me. There's a particular story that Bill's going to be covering that really got to me. And I have to admit that I was running around the house yelling. It used to be lock up your heart. Now it's unlock your loins. So when I mentioned that to Bill and RFM, somehow my words ended up on the thumbnail, but I think it looks fantastic. And it really does kind of represent how I feel about this. So
it sounds too crazy to actually be true, Rebecca.
Well, yes. And I'll get into this. But yes, when I first read that, I actually believed it was from the Lord's newsroom or some kind of a joke when we get to Bill's story. So, and this story, of course, is our number one story, Elder Oaks Marriage Hopes for Young Latter-day Saints. And I did think it was a joke, which tells me what my gut feels about this, how strongly. We're also going to be covering the shooting at the LDS funeral that kills 2. We're going to be covering Uchtdorf is back, baby. The silver fox rises again. I'll be covering that. RFM will be covering the shooting story. We'll also be talking about lewd sexual acts on LDS property. I will be taking that story. An end to Temple Square missions. I will also be talking about that. And a church activity lawsuit, meaning a lawsuit because of something that happened at a church activity. And it's an update on that, and RFM will be covering that. So
involving a boy losing his foot.
Involving a little boy losing his foot, a very tragic event. So let's get right to it with Bill and our number one story about Elder Oaks's opinion of what your young adult children should be doing.
I got to agree with you, Rebecca. This is so strange, and I think folks will see it immediately in the quote, and it's for a double-fold reason. One is that there's this unhealthy thing the church does, and then it's the way Elder Oaks articulated this. So Salt Lake Tribune, this was covered in a few different places. Salt Lake Tribune is the image that I grabbed just to show the viewers where it showed up in the news. Salt Lake Tribune, LDS Church President Dallin H hopes lower missionary ages will lead to lower marriages ages. And this was in the Salt Lake Tribune on January 11th. Peggy Fletcher Stack and David Noyce headed up this article. And in this was an interview with Elder Oaks. So he's the new president of the church. Generally, when someone's called to be president of the church news, public affairs folks do want to get to him right away and get an interview where he lays out some of the things he's thinking about. And in this case, Elder Oaks was asked a bunch of questions, and there were 2 questions and answers that'll stick out in this conversation that I utilized. One we're going to spend a lot of time on, and it's this one right here. So he's asked, you recently announced that young women can serve missions at age 18 instead of 19. How do you think that will bless the lives of young women across the church? President Oaks responds, I think it will increase their time for planning their lives, whether they use their possibility to serve a mission or whether they plan their lives in other directions. And I think that's strange because the missionary age got lowered, but he indicates that some people may utilize that by going on a mission, and other people may go in other directions. I thought that was strange. It continues. He says it simply increases the options. And I'm going to argue that it actually decreases the options as we go through the data. And then this was the part that I think we'll spend the most time on. I also hope that it will reduce the age of marriage. In the time that we have lowered the age for young men and for young women in the past, we've seen an increase in people who meet someone in the mission field and marry them, which is perfectly appropriate if it doesn't start too early in their missionary service. Well, how early? First off, the church has never suggested that an elder and a sister begin their romantic involvement while on a mission. And what Elder Oaks seems to be saying here is, long as it doesn't start too early, an elder and a sister can start their romantic involvement on their mission. That's what he's saying. Now,
okay, as a former missionary here.
No,
Did you go on a mission, Rebecca?
I didn't go on a mission, but I sent many missionaries into the MTC.
I'm sure you did. But regardless of that, as the only mission on the panel right now speaking, that is crazy talk.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is, as we would say in Japan, a kanwa. You can't do that. This is absolutely out of bounds. No missionary is supposed to do that. In fact, Bill, wasn't it within the past week or two that Colby Reddish was on the show? Was it Colby? I think it was. Talking about somebody who's anonymous, who must have been from his mission, coming down on him for getting together with his wife before they left their mission. And Colby was at pains to explain that that's not how it happened. None of that would happen except for the fact that this guy is changing the rules all of a sudden.
And I have to say that I have several recent examples of friends who have children on missions who, maybe said, oh, I think I'm attracted to this other elder or this ward mission leader, all age appropriate. But there were steps taken to separate them for the duration of the mission. Like, oh, if you guys are feeling that way, we're going to transfer you here and you there. Lock up your heart. That was exactly how it was very recently. And they would take steps to make sure that they separated anybody that there might be some kind of romantic involvement. This is so problematic. I can't even begin to talk about how problematic it is. And it really, I believed that it wasn't true. I thought it was a comedy, a farce, something from the Lord's newsroom. And I will say, sorry, Bill, I know I'm long-winded, but the only other time that this happened to me where I thought they can't have done this, this has got to be a joke, was November 15. That's the only other time where I thought this is too far, even for them. So that kind of tells you how strongly I and a lot of other people feel about this.
Can I just say how remarkable it is that he can completely 180 degrees reverse the playing field from what it has been up to this moment, mm-hmm. and still go ahead and say this is part of the Lord's plan, like nothing ever changed.
And I will note, Elder Oaks didn't serve a mission. So when you, RFM, said, I'm the only one up here who served a mission, that also includes the president of the church who we're talking about. He didn't serve. It is a strange thing. I as a bishop, I shouldn't say I sent, but I was aware of numerous missionaries. I was responsible for making the phone call on a couple of them. But there were numerous missionaries in the mission that covered my ward, missionaries that either served in my ward or shortly after they left my ward had interacted with females inappropriately and got sent home.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think you want to set a precedent of giving elders and sisters permission to pursue romance while out on their mission. Again, they're adults. They should get to do whatever to some degree. But if you're a church that has a law of chastity, I think you're going to run into some problems by doing it this way.
Elder Oaks was married. Oh, go ahead.
No, you, Rebecca.
I was going to say, I had to look up when he was married, and he was married when he was just 19. Of course, he couldn't serve a mission because of the Korean War, and he did jump right into marriage. So I thought that was interesting. And maybe that would have worked 90 years ago or whenever it was that his first marriage, that he points out in the article, it's appropriate for your first marriage, right? I thought
yes, and I was going to bring that up. Tell us about that. Why does he say that?
Why does he say that? Do you have that quote, Bill?
Again, Bill?
I have that quote.
I don't have. No, I don't.
You didn't read it. Here, let me just read this.
Oh yeah, here it is.
Yeah.
Go ahead though.
Okay, hold on. No, I lost it. Okay. This is part of the Lord's plan to overcome the tendency of waiting until the late 20s to have a first marriage, Oaks said.
Yeah.
Why would you say that?
Yeah. It's almost like it's perfectly understood that you're going to have more than one. Have the first one by this age.
Yeah.
Yes.
let me read this whole thing again. I also hope that it will reduce the age of marriage in the time that we have lowered the age for young men and young women in the past. We've seen an increase in people who meet someone in the mission field and marry them, which is perfectly appropriate if it doesn't start too early in their missionary service.
So the second day.
I think it's part of the Lord's plan to overcome the tendency of waiting until the late 20s to have a first marriage. I think we will see a reduction in the age of marriages for Latter-day Saints.
Okay, this continues to illustrate why it is church leaders should not sit for interviews.
Yeah.
And say things out loud, because statistically, the late 20s, like 25 to 32, is the best chance of a successful marriage. That 18 to 22, the worst chance statistically, can't even say it, of having, success in a marriage. And I just wonder if there's a point on a mission where the mission president will now call the missionary in and say, you know what, I've noticed that you've been, kind of hanging out and talking to Sister Brown. I give you permission to maybe step it up a little bit. And I can't even predict the kind of love triangles, jealousies, competitiveness, this kind of thing with a whole bunch of young people in a very unnatural environment. They're dating in a vacuum. There's no parental or family influence. You're not bringing the girl home to meet parents, anything like that. You're in this strange competitive environment with people. It's like the Hunger Games for dating, or the Squid Games. I can't even imagine what these mission presidents are going to have to deal with. They already do when the mandate was keep them separate, transfer them. Now, are they being told to kind of encourage that? And how far does this go? We all know people that were sent home for, acting on it, and not even like completely acting on it. So
yes, and now he's saying it's completely appropriate.
Exactly.
Of course, it still won't be to act on it, I imagine. But, how many times as a Mormon do you hear the sermon about your thoughts lead to your actions?
Yeah, it reminds me of Reverend Moon. You know what? Let's just put these kids together and match them up. It reminds me of sort of a Warren Jeffs kind of a scenario. I don't want to say sex trafficking. Maybe that's too harsh. But the idea of an outside entity with power over young people, trying to put them together in that kind of a way, in sort of a mass setting. I don't know. It's just icky, if I can use those words. And I do mean it much more strongly than icky.
Yeah. I'll just say here too, if this answer to this question had one little glitch in it, we might say he misspoke or they misrepresented what he said. The fact that this has 3 or 4 problems in it says that it's exactly what he said, and on some level intended.
Or he's really losing it.
And that's possible too. He's old and he's frail, and who the heck knows if the answers to the questions are coming from a stable person or a senile person at this point. I don't know. I will say that this is very different than the Mormonism I grew up in as a young adult, thinking that missionaries were supposed to just completely, as you say, Rebecca, lock up your heart. And now, to the title of the thumbnail, now it's time to unlock your loins. So we'll see. I did want to point out another thing that's really problematic with this. And I just want to note some of the research. We are all aware that in Mormonism, they want you to marry young. They want you to have lots of kids. And on this side of things, we understand that position that puts people in, young people in. Frontal cortex isn't developed all the way yet. They get locked into a choice in their lives, and they are stuck. And because they're so young, often neither partner very well understands themselves. Neither partner very well understands what they're looking for in the world. They don't have tools to manage their feelings. They don't have the experience yet of life. And Elder Oak sees that as a good thing. But what does the data say? So I want to note here, and then on the right-hand side are the articles that the data comes from. Some of them are peer-reviewed research papers. Some of them are blogs on like Psychology Today and various articles that are sharing studies. And then on the left here will be just my quick synopsis of what's going on. So first, some large data sets show divorce risk tends to decline with age until about age 30. So somewhere around 30 to 32, marriage there is when you have the best chance of it lasting the longest without divorce. You get past 30 to 32, the divorce rate starts to go up again. But when you marry in the late teens, early 20s, this data also shows that divorce is going up at that point. So there's sort of this happy median of around 30 years of age, where when you get married at age 30, you have the best chance of your relationship lasting the longest. I'll just note here. However, after the odds of divorce, after that, the odds of divorce increase by 5% a year past 30 to 32, and also found that changes in slopes to be statistically significant. Sorry. There was the note here that, like, when you get young, and it shows it here, each additional year of age at marriage reduces the odds of divorce by 11%. However, after that, the odds of divorce increases by 5% a year. And so again, that happy median, 30 to 32. I'll just go here to the next one. The reason that so many couples are getting married later in life, this was from the article, may be very well due to science. We're realizing that the brain doesn't fully develop until people are around 25 years of age, which is very different from how people used to think about adulthood, which was 18 or college age. Says New York-based clinical psychologist, Dr. Laura Frederick. She said, quote, people are taking longer to find themselves, which is a good thing. By the time people are getting married, they have a better sense of who they really are, meaning they're more secure in their career and in their sense of self as they get older. And that helps them make good decisions with their life partner. And so this was out of an article, What's the Average Age of Marriage in the U.S.? Our data reveals the number. And I'll just note, I think this right here is the elephant in the room. The church doesn't want people developing a better sense of who they are, doesn't want them becoming more secure in their career and having their sense of self develop. And when you want someone to stay in a high demand fundamentalist religion, you want to get them locked in early, and you want them to have to compromise parts of themselves in ways that they feel to some degree trapped. So being married young and having lots of children is one of the ways that you trap somebody in a system where they feel like they've got so much invested and so much going on in their life that it would just be too chaotic to step away, sort of the sunken cost fallacy. So I'll note that. This next one, this was out of a peer-reviewed paper, Romantic Relationship Patterns in Young Adulthood and Their Developmental Antecedents. So this made three main points. Ages 18 to 25 is a distinct developmental phase, and people in that age bracket of 18 to 25 are not fully mature adulthood brain development. So psychology research identifies ages 18 to 25 as the period of emerging adulthood, a developmental stage marked by identity exploration, changing relationships, and continued brain development. This phase is a time when people are still shaping who they are, not simply who they choose as life partners. That implies that decisions here, like marriage, are made amid ongoing change. Why this matters: if people marry while still undergoing core identity formation, they may have less stable preferences and self-understanding, which is linked to poorer relationship quality and higher later regret compared to those who marry after identity consolidation. And here's the thing, the church is gauging all of this by whether someone stays married and stays in the church. But there are a whole host of other factors that, if you really are concerned about the health and well-being of an individual, that you ought to consider and have as part of the formula. Number two, early 20s marriage does not show clear advantages over marrying in mid-20s or later. National longitudinal data indicate that young adults who first married before age 22 had lower life satisfaction and other markers than those who married between 22 and 26, with those 22 to 26 often reporting higher satisfaction. The brain and psychosocial development around ages 18 to 22 are still stabilizing, especially in decision-making and planning regions of the brain, according to developmental neuroscience. And if psychological well-being and relationship stability peak for early to mid-20s marriage and brain development isn't fully mature at age 20, then pushing marriage younger could correlate with less optimal outcomes. And then number 3, the romantic relationship patterns in emerging adulthood are variable and often unstable. Many 18 to 25-year-olds have unstable or changing romantic involvements through this period. Again, if you allow a kid to be normal and not be stuck in a system that pressures them into this, kids are going to date a bunch of people. In those experiences, they're going to learn what qualities they like and don't like. They're going to learn about their own capacities and what they're able to handle or not handle. And just the experience of life is going to help them grow and develop and become more mature and wise human beings who can make better decisions about what they want out of the world. And the church jumps into the way of that and derails you into being trapped into a system. And it's not good for one's health. Again, the outcomes are less optimal at these young marriages. All right, I've got a few more of these here. This article, Family Formation and Post-Secondary Educational Attainment Among Community College and 4-Year College Students. This was also a longitudinal study. Early family formation reduces bachelor degree completion. A 2025 study reports that students who were married or had children before 25 were less likely to earn a bachelor's degree, particularly among 4-year college students. So people drop off from their education.
Sure.
And if you're not educated, if you don't finish your education, you have already limited yourself in a lot of ways. Now, again, lots of people miss out, drop out of college, or don't go to college at all and make something big of themselves. But generally speaking, the statistics say that if you marry young, the likelihood of you finishing your education and getting that degree are less likely.
Because you got to be making money to feed the new mouths.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, that absolutely true. Okay, this one here is also a peer-reviewed research paper, Marriage and Mental Health Among Young Adults. This came out of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Early marriage correlates with worse mental health outcomes in young adulthood. A widely cited study on marriage and mental health among young adults discusses evidence that marriage before age 19 is positively associated with psychiatric disorders, with selection effects also plausible. Now that's under the age of 19. In this situation, we're not exactly talking about that. These are kids who, as young adults, go on missions, come back, and they're in their early 20s. But this was also part of the study, especially those who marry in their teens, but also those who marry in their early 20s may be less likely to enjoy positive mental health benefits from marriage. Early marriages are notorious for their relatively low survival rates, which suggests that early marriages may be distinct from later marriages in terms of marital quality and may not confer the same mental health benefits. Moreover, the benefits of marriage's social approval may not extend to those who marry young and receive less societal support. Now, in Mormonism, you're going to get plenty of support, pats on the back, but you don't actually get the kind of support you need that when your marriage is struggling, you have access to a local bishop who is an untrained lay leader who does some other job that has nothing to do with marriage counseling or helping people with things. And so while people will pat you on the back, you don't actually get the resources and support that you need to be successful. Instead, you get told to just be faithful, endure to the end, and wear the mask, put on the pretty clothes, and smile on Sunday. So there's that one.
I will say that, sometimes you get surprised at the church going against the accepted understanding of science, and yet this just underscores what I've come to realize about 10 years ago with startling clarity, which is that the church does not care for its members.
Mm-mm.
The members are ridden by the church and beaten like a rented mule.
I have that underlined in my notes here. Does not care. This is not about the well-being of the people. And I think it's interesting. If you think about last week, we talked about them actually saying out loud that English lessons are really just to promote the church, right? They said it out loud. This is a huge say it out loud. We knew changing the mission age was about this. We talked about that. We knew everything was trying to point kids to early marriage. they're actually saying, they're not even hiding it anymore. They're just saying it. And I just pray that this is a wake-up call to LDS parents to protect their children from this kind of, this pointing and putting them on this path.
It does make me think, I'm sorry, this is back to something that happened before about President Oaks thinking he'll do an interview. He'll sit down for an interview because he's much more capable at handling interviews than Elder Oaks was with the BBC. I guarantee you that's what he was telling himself.
I've got a few other ones here. I'll try to be quick. This one also just pointed out that the brain isn't developed yet. And so hence you can't make good planning and decisions. You don't have the planning and decision skills yet developed in your brain, which just tells you right there that if you pressure people to get married at a young age and they don't have the planning and decision skills developed part of their brain, then they're not going to plan as well. And they're not going to make decisions as well. And so you're giving them a less than optimal outcome compared to marrying, again, at an older age, at least at 25. And again, the study showed that the optimum age was around 30 to 32, which may be late for people, but certainly maybe 20, 21 is just way too young. So next one here, emerging adulthood, a theory of development from late teens through 20s. This essentially said that 18 to 25 are typically high exploration instability years. Rushing marriage fights the developmental grain. Arnett here, the author of this article, his foundational paper defines emerging adulthood as a distinct age, late teens through 20s, characterized by identity explorations and major life experimentation. We frown upon that in Mormonism. That's called sin. But in a lot of ways, those are the experiences that young people need to be able to figure out who they are and what they want their life to look like, and to make some mistakes and to learn from them. And the church doesn't want people to make mistakes. It wants them to jump into marriage young. And again, I just think those people are much less prepared for the life ahead of them. Okay, this one here.
The church apparently also does not feel like it's enough to have people go to church and go to conference and go to all their meetings. They have to be in the lives of the members 24/7, from womb to tomb, from birth to earth. And what Rebecca had pointed out to me, either today or yesterday when we were talking, is that, of course, you get through high school. Your last year of high school is getting ready for your mission, guys. Then you go on your mission as soon as you graduate. And then during your mission now, you start courting your future wife, who's a sister missionary there with you. And then you get home, you get married, and you go to the temple. Now you're locked in with the real serious covenants. And that is what they're trying to do, as well as create new Mormons, of course, is that they're trying to get them to the temple because their statistics say that once we get somebody to the temple, they're more likely to not leave the church.
This is entirely about perpetuating the church and not about the well-being of the kids that you're pressuring. This one,
these are human beings.
Yeah.
President Oaks, you're playing with the lives of human beings who look to you and trust you to do what's best for them.
Yeah. This one I thought was a big one. Younger marriage is linked to higher intimate partner violence risk in large cross-national data sets. A 2023 pooled analysis finds steep reductions in past year intimate partner violence as age at marriage increases, continuing declines up to the early to mid 20s. For broader health outcomes of marriage under 18, a 2022 systemic review summarizes links to intimate partner violence and other harms. What they're saying there is under 18 and under, the rate is really high. And then little by little, it drops off till you get to the mid 20s. And so in the really early 20s and in the teenage years, people at those ages marrying are much more prone to being in a relationship that involves domestic violence of one sort or another. And I think we all intuitively understand that young people don't have the capacity to manage their feelings yet. They don't have the tools and resources to know how to lead a life and to handle themselves when they feel agitated or activated. And marrying young leads then to more violence. Okay, so there's that. This was the 37% rule. One article talked about the best way to get a healthy relationship is whatever your goal is. Say you want to date 15 people. to sort of figure out what you need. The very first 5, you just automatically don't form a long-term relationship with. All you're doing there is collecting data. So you get through the first third thereabouts without making any decision to move into that relationship. Even if you're afraid that might be the best person that ever comes along, they say statistically, if you take time and get to know a handful of people and just automatically you date them a few times, you learn who they are, you kind of figure out, I don't like this, I do like that, let those people completely go. And then it says when you get to the next 2/3 of whatever it is you're willing to sort of explore, the moment you find a person that was better than those first 5 you ditched, that's the person you form a relationship with. And that you would automatically, in a sense, have a person who's better than what you've already let go. And you would know at that point that you have a good chance of having a fairly healthy, good relationship. And so that was the math they applied. And they talked about some of the studies that played that out. I remember reading once that they said that the average person truly, not that everybody does this, not that this is how it works, but that a human being needs to experience somewhere around 15 to 17 different humans to understand truly what they want out of the world and what they can tolerate in another human, what they like about another human. But I also acknowledge that when we get later in life, when relationships start, the divorce rate starts to go up higher again too. So there are a lot of things that sort of work against figuring it out. And we all know the divorce rate is already around 50% anyway. So there's that one. Is marrying, so by the way, I want to note here as I get to the end, not all the data says what I just showed. And I'm going to show 2 articles that say otherwise. And so I am fully aware that if an apologist wants to step forward and say, Bill's wrong, there are these other studies that say that things are great, I'm going to just note them here. A major new American report finds no empirical reasons to favor later capstone marriages over the age of 25 over cornerstone marriages. In other words, capstone, you've got your whole life together, and now you're just putting the cherry on top, versus a cornerstone marriage, getting married young and forming your entire life around that marriage. Early married husbands report that they are more satisfied with their marriage than later married husbands, 81 versus 71, and report greater sexual satisfaction, 63 versus 49. Now, I might attribute that to patriarchy of some sort. Marrying young, people are a little more naive, and I think the man often can have an unhealthy ego in a relationship, and I think some of those things can play out. I'll just note here, similarly, early married wives report they were a little more satisfied with their marriages, 73 versus 70, and reported greater sexual satisfaction, 62 versus 51. There were no significant differences between capstone and cornerstone marriages on reports of household division of labor and a sense of teamwork. So they were sort of looking for patriarchy. There were no pronounced demographic differences between early marrieds and later marrieds, although early marrieds tend to have less education. So even this, in saying there wasn't as much of a difference or no difference at all, or that maybe even early marriages had more of a benefit, there is a note here that early marrieds do end up with less education. And then this was my last one, I believe. A recent longitudinal study found that people who have had premarital sexual experience are more likely to experience divorce later on, even when factors like upbringing and beliefs are controlled for. Those with the most partners before marriage had the highest risk. It's important to stress this isn't about morality. Rather, it's about patterns of relationship formation and how they correlate with long-term outcomes. I'll say this really quickly. On this one here, I wonder if the higher report of satisfaction has to do with having less experience, being more naive to what is possible in a relationship, and hence, because you don't have the experience, you think higher of what you do have than what it actually is. And I'll say too of this other one, judging something based on solely divorce, I think looks at relationships the wrong way. If somebody's in an unhealthy relationship, or it's not meeting their needs, or it's unsatisfactory, there shouldn't be such a stigma on divorce. And I think in a lot of situations in Mormonism, people might be toughing it out and staying together, but maybe they're not very happy doing it. because they feel trapped and they don't know what else to do. And so I don't think divorce on its own should be the sole factor for encouraging people to live their lives differently so as to not get divorced. So there's those. And I do have this other thing, but I do want to just ask you before I go into it really quick. Do you guys have any thoughts at the end here of this marriage section and what Elder Oaks is suggesting for the young people of the church? I can't hear you, Rebecca.
Yeah, I have pages of notes, and I've been discussing this with about 5 or 6 other post-Mormon women of my age, and we are just horrified, honestly, for young women. And we really hope that because they said it out loud this time, that maybe parents, faithful parents, might go, you know what, I don't know that I want to send my daughter into this sort of sexually charged, possibly predatory environment that is now a mission, if that is to become the focus on a young woman instead of just her personal growth, her religious growth. We also question, where is this data? Sure, there may be more early marriages, but it's early to tell if these are working out. And all of us have anecdotal data of, young, faithful couples that get married very young, and a couple years in, they're not having kids and they're just ending it. I anecdotally, like out of a neighborhood of 5 couples like this, have seen 3 of them just part ways. So I don't know if they have the data to show that these have the longevity. The other concern that we have is this sounds a lot like how we were raised, women in our 50s and 60s. You get married very young, put your education to the side, raise the children, support the spouse. I'm seeing a lot of comments like this in the chat, as people say, that was me. Everyone says, I love my children. Of course we do. Of course we do. But we were really put into that box. I have been happy to see in the last 5, years that young LDS women seem to maybe not be doing that. They may be getting married younger, but they're finishing school. They're starting an internship. They're starting a career. They're not having children as fast. I have seen this and I've said, this is amazing. They'll have a 401k, unlike me and a lot of my, peers of my age who did not stay in the workforce or pursue those opportunities. I see this now, this push. And again, it's okay if you're 18 and you fall in love and you want to marry someone. We're talking about an external pressure. We're talking about a voice from God. Some people will see it this way, that is telling somebody to do this. And this, I believe, pushes women back into that era where it may not be the most healthy thing for you. It certainly isn't anything that you decided on your own. So I see this as this big step backwards when I felt like we were making some progress. Most LDS women work. They have kids, they work, they're putting off having kids. Very different from my day. And like I said, these other post-Mormon women that we're all discussing. So I'm concerned, actually, I'm concerned for young women and young men. An external force should not be reaching into your relationships or telling you how to run your life like this. And unfortunately, this is seen as the voice of God. So I think that's why I'm so upset about it.
RFM, anything from you? No. Okay, then I will just really quickly touch on this one other question. This was another question you got in the same interview. President Oaks, you recently announced a temple for Portland, Maine at a devotional, not in general conference. Rebecca has talked about this before. Why did you announce that temple? And of course, they're not going to exactly tell you the truth. President Oaks answers, that was a strong impression that came to me early in my knowledge that President Nelson had transferred to heaven. It has occurred to me for a long time that the best place to announce a temple is in that temple district. Now, which one is it?
In other words, I got this idea shortly after Nelson died.
No, he said a long time. I think he's been sitting on the stand.
It's a confusing sentence. That was a strong impression that came to me early in my knowledge that President Nelson had transferred to heaven. So shortly after I found out he died, this is what he's saying.
Right, but then he said for a long time he's been thinking this. So I picture him on the stand listening to Nelson announce and the pomp and circumstance and going, this is not a good thing.
I want to see the video on his face now.
Exactly. He's got the lighted pen. He can do what he wants now. So
he wants it both ways, right? He wants to say that this was a revelation when Nelson died, and then he wants to say that this has been something prominent on his mind for a long, long time.
Another good point, Bill. So once again, he's changing things immediately. He's saying it out loud. If you will listen to him, he's telling you what he's doing. and then he's saying it's from God, just like the other one.
Yep.
He says here, and the best person to announce it is the file leader in that area, which can be an apostle on assignment to a stake conference or another meeting, or it can be the area president if there is no apostle in the district when a decision is made by the first presidency to have a temple there. And as you point out, Rebecca, this is entirely to thwart all the things that go on now when the church announces a temple and people have time to gather together and plan to try to push back against it. So there's that. Anything else you guys want to say about that? Otherwise,
You're right, Rebecca, to the extent he is saying that this seems to have first come to him from heaven shortly after President Nelson died, I think he's confabulating.
Well,
He's been
remember
thinking
when
about this forever and cringing in his seat.
exactly, and you're right. He's saying this out loud too. I think this is the era of saying things out loud. Remember when President Nelson became prophet and Wendy let it slip? Oh, there's so many things he's wanted to do, and now he's unleashed. Right? This is what President Oaks is saying. And if you read the last part of the quote down there, he says, "I will continue to have it this way as long as I have influence." If you put it back, you can see that he is admitting that his influence, which is supposed to be the voice of the Lord, where is it that he says it? As long as I have influence. Let me see if I can read it, because I thought that was important. Anyway, he's admitting that he knows when the next person in charge is there, they will probably also change everything that he's doing. So I thought this was a revelatory quote in letting us see how it really works. And he knows he's in it for a short time. He can have his way right now with his lighted pen, and then it's going to be somebody else. So where's the voice of the Lord in that? Who's supposed to be consistent? That's what I'd like to know.
Now is a great day of President Oaks's power. But you know something? We've got Kristen just sitting there looking at him adoringly in every single one of these pictures.
Yep.
What happened to that lady? There was some lady who was really, really important before.
Didn't she have
Kristen.
dark
I
hair?
can't remember who that was. Who was that?
I sort of remember. Yeah. Oh, I found the quote. He said, "It is a pattern that we will follow as long as I have influence in determining those things." So he admits his influence is temporary until the next person is in charge. And that's, again, saying it out loud.
Yeah, I think that, I think his mouth is unleashed, is what's unleashed on President Oaks. I'm sure other people are cringing that he's actually saying this stuff out loud as he lumbers through the china shop like a bull. By the way, I was making the point, it's Wendy Nelson.
Yes.
Like we said, as soon as President Nelson goes the way of all flesh, Wendy's going to wink out.
Yeah.
She won't be anywhere because hers was a reflected glory. She spoke at numerous fora. She wrote books, which received different reviews. And a person of accomplishment. And yet now she seems to have gone away, vanished like the mist before the rising sun, like I said she would. And now it is Kristen's turn to shine.
Yeah, for now.
One has to wonder what Dieter Uchtdorf sitting there has been thinking about all his time in leadership. Like, if I were in charge, this is what I would do differently. And I'm interested to see what the first few months of his presidency might look like. Anyway, back to you guys. That's the end of my story. Sorry that took a minute.
No, I think that was really important. And that just broke. It was just yesterday, right? I think it was just yesterday that came out. Yeah. So I think it's just beginning as people really start to realize what that means. And I think it's going to get a lot of play and people are going to be really upset.
President Uchtdorf, if Elder Uchtdorf, but he's president now. We're going to get to that in a second.
We're going to get to that. Yeah, that's an exciting part. Okay, I think, it looks like my story is next.
If you have little children present, please take them to another room.
Well,
Rebecca's about to get dirty.
I'm going to be very discreet, of course. And again, this is a perfect segue because we are talking about President Oaks in Idaho. And he was there giving that interview as he was dedicating the Burley, Idaho temple. And here we are talking about Idaho and some sort of unsavory things that are happening. The headline is Rexburg LDS churches boost security after reports of men entering the building for sexual acts.
What is this thing on the right? It looks like Johnny 5.
Yeah, it's it's recording equipment, right? Because this is what they're saying. And I was going to say, who can't not read this headline if you see this, right? You're not going to go, you're going to go, what? So I kind of did a little summary here. It says local law enforcement in Rexburg, Idaho have stepped up patrols around Latter-day Saint Meeting House after reports that unknown men have been entering the church property and engaging in lewd sexual behavior inside the buildings. According to Rexburg Assistant Police Chief Gary Hagan, officers are increasing their presence, especially at night, even though, and this is kind of important, there is no formal open criminal investigation at this time.
So what are the officers doing at the building?
That's my question. What entity could possibly call upon all the officers to patrol their building? We'll find out. The move aims to deter further incidents and enhance safety around the religious facility. Okay, so, and of course I have some youth playing basketball there. It says the heightened security follows a letter that was sent to local LDS church leaders in both Rexburg and Idaho Falls from 2 regional leaders within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The emails, whose authenticity has been confirmed, so these were not, because we have had a rash of not real emails, right? But apparently these were real, described an ongoing issue with unidentified men entering the meeting house and engaging in sexual acts, sometimes recording themselves. And I actually think that's what it's about. Like, it's kind of a niche. Maybe you know or don't know, but like guys dressed like missionaries, and there's a market for this kind of material. Let's just say that. The occurrences reportedly took place on weeknights at times when youth activities were in progress, raising concerns about possible exposure of minors or other churchgoers to inappropriate conduct. Imagine playing basketball, chasing the ball out into the hall, perhaps the Relief Society room, opening the door. Oh my goodness. Yeah. What might you see? I don't know. The church correspondence noted that one individual was arrested in 2025, so just last year, for similar behavior, but the church leaders don't think this is the same person that's involved in these current incidents. Document or public records of that prior arrest could not be independently verified by the news outlet. So even though the church in its letter says somebody was arrested last year for that, be careful, the news outlet was not able to find that information. So that's kind of interesting. As a precautionary measure, temporary cameras have been installed in one meeting house. Now, we've had lots of different episodes where we've said, why aren't there cameras? Things that happen in meeting houses.
Down every hallway,
in
every meeting house.
Yeah,
except for the restroom.
Exactly. But in this case, because somebody is coming into the meeting house and desecrating it, they are willing to set up temporary cameras. They also, the cameras have been installed in one meeting house in Rexburg to monitor the entries and exits, and police have requested special access to buildings when they have reasonable suspicion of intrusion. So they can just kind of burst in there, I guess. So despite these concerns, church activities have not been canceled, heaven forbid, and local police agencies in Idaho Falls and surrounding counties say they are not currently investigating any active cases. So they've just been warned basically by the church. Now, the news outlet asked the church for a comment. No comment. We're used to hearing that, right? And the church is basically saying, just keep the doors locked and the windows each night and prevent unauthorized access. Now, I tried to they did not share the letter as a whole, but I tried to pull out the statements that were in quotes from the news article. So you guys can freeze on that if you want later and kind of read. I kind of went over everything, but it just sounds like they received this letter that this was happening and the police sprang into action, although no actual, ongoing investigation and no evidence that somebody was arrested before. Now, I will say that over on Faithful social media, I had come across this from some ward clerks asking, how do we work Kindu? Apparently all wards are supposed to use this now, and it's a little access system where you can only get into the building if you have an app on your phone. And so say the young men are going to play basketball, you give the leader the code for that night, he unlocks the door and you go in. So apparently this is church-wide. This is from the church site. I guess these buildings in Rexburg are not using it. Or maybe somebody got the code, but they are trying to limit access. I remember going into the building when I was a youth, and it was a free-for-all. Anybody could have been in there. I brought all my friends who weren't members of the church. We would, go to activities, run around the halls, use the phone. It was a free-for-all, and there's no way to monitor everybody. So anyway, interesting scenario, and we will, I guess, keep an eye on it and see if there's any actual more concrete information about what happens. Any thoughts from either of you about lewd acts in the Rexburg church buildings?
Lots of them.
Yeah.
But I just have one question for you, which is, how is it the church came to understand that this was going on in this building?
This is what is very unclear. Very unclear. I do not know. Self-reported? I have no idea.
Somebody talked about it. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody might have seen something on the dark web or whatever. Hopefully
Right.
not the bishop.
Right.
But I don't know that. I mean, pretty much every ward building looks kind of the same from the inside.
Mhm. Unless somebody caught them, told leaders, but it sounds like it was from the top up. So I wonder if someone confessed. I wonder, I have no idea, but it also sounds kind of just vague because
Mhm.
the police don't have any evidence of anything to be able to open a formal, kind of investigation. So they're just kind of monitoring, keeping an eye right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I don't have anything necessarily to add. I think it is a strange thing that people are using ward buildings in some way that's not approved, and we don't get a lot of details, and that seems sort of intentional as well. So
The church
Yeah.
is so desperate to get people to church. I'm surprised they called the cops.
Well, that's probably true, but I do know that there is entertainment out there that they film things in church buildings.
Like what?
There's a huge market for people that are dressed in garments or missionary attire.
Really?
And, I've never seen it, but I've been told. And
You
filmed
get
in
extra
church
points
buildings.
if you're filming it inside of a church building?
Yeah, it's kind of a niche, you know. Yeah, no, everybody go Google it. Yeah,
I
don't
didn't
do
know
it.
that, Rebecca.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's
I'm
true.
wondering how
There's
you do, but I'm not going to ask.
missionary porn and garment. Yeah. If you can imagine it, somebody wants to see it.
I
That's
can
it. Let's
imagine
move on to
that.
our next story. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
And this
yeah.
is an RFM story. And this was the biggest story all through last week. So
Absolutely crazy.
yeah.
Salt Lake City. 2 people killed, more injured in shooting near church building in Salt Lake. KUTV Wednesday, January 8th, 2026. This was last Wednesday when we were doing Mormonism live.
hmm
2 people were killed, more injured in a shooting near a funeral service at a church building in Salt Lake. Officials confirmed a total of 8 victims, while the suspect was still at large in the aftermath of the shooting. Now, I checked this morning. I talked to you this afternoon, Rebecca. To your knowledge, have they found anybody or arrested anybody in connection with this murder?
No, they haven't. And in fact, the police have come out and made statements, sort of careful statements, but basically saying we are having a challenge with cooperation. So a
Yeah,
challenge
because they're
getting
not going to squeal
information.
on their brothers or, the
Yes.
cops are the common enemies to certain
Yes.
factions.
Yes, and they're calling it a challenge with cooperation. So, although I have seen a video where must have been the bishop or a church leader that came into the meeting as
Mm.
people were being held afterwards,
Mhm.
as you would, so that and said, please cooperate with law enforcement. They're going to be here. They're going to talk to you. So there was sort of a plea from leadership that everybody please cooperate.
Right. I guess that didn't go over so well. But I know how this goes. I used to watch Hill Street Blues. An unknown number of people have been detained as part of the ongoing investigation. Salt Lake City Police Chief Brian Redd said law enforcement was confident they will bring those responsible to justice. This is the reporting as of last Wednesday, emphasizing that the incident was not a random act. Our officers will not rest until we bring them to justice, Redd said. After 5 days, I imagine they're pretty sleepy. Salt Lake City Mayor Aaron Mendenhall said the incident should never have happened and vowed that those responsible will be held accountable. The jury's still out on that one, too. Then the reporting on Thursday, January 9th. Police released the identities of the 2 people killed in a shooting outside a Salt Lake City church. Officials with the Salt Lake City Police Department said 2 people were killed and 6 were injured in a shooting Wednesday night near 700 North and Redwood Road. Let's be extra careful out there. The 2 people killed were identified Thursday as Sione Vatuve, 38, and Vai Tuli Kihihifo, age 46. There was a lot more pictures that I found of the first individual, Sione, than the second, but that's probably because his wife talked to the papers a few days ago. So here's some pictures that were taken from inside the church. Can you tell us about these pictures, Rebecca?
Yeah, it was interesting. Somebody, like as soon as it happened, started sending me video. I know somebody in the chat mentioned that Lauren Matthias actually went over there. I was in my pajamas, so I didn't. I threw some clothes on and I made a short and kind of started talking about it. But yeah, I followed this all night through the night. And there was a video, the first part of the video where the picture on the left was taken from, on the top, the left and right, was, during the funeral. And then after the funeral, there's police presence, there's lights outside. So it's a little confusing, whether there
So
was.
the one on the left at the top is during the funeral.
Right. Yeah, they're speaking.
That's
The
what
casket
I
was
meant
there.
earlier.
Yeah, the casket was there,
Okay.
and you can see them gathered around the casket on the right, and then they got up one at a time and were, giving heartfelt remarks. Now, the individual was going to be buried in California, so I think it was also being remote viewed by people in California, and then it was going to, because there was a question whether it was a remote viewing,
Like
but
Tim
I watched.
Macklin.
Yeah, I watched a video of a family and people helping to set up the scene for the funeral the night before.
Yeah.
And then, I watched, you could see the casket there and everybody there. So there's a couple different sets of pictures, but as I understand it, law enforcement did not arrive until after the incident. And these other pictures are just people paying respects and sort of eulogizing the deceased.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. Now, on the upper left hand, see this very tall, thin person. That's the one I was talking to you about on the phone before the show, Rebecca.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's the second
I
person.
think it's the same person.
Yeah, this is another picture of him with a partner or wife. Obviously, it's a wife. They're standing outside a LDS temple where I expect they may have just gotten sealed. I don't know. A lot of times that's what happens with the baby. Maybe they were there for somebody else, but it looks like a temple. He's obviously LDS. And there's a picture in the middle from another source. And over here, we have that picture that you had provided, which I cropped. So we just have that. And I think I see a distinct similarity, obviously, in the body type, which is an unusual body type, the eyes and the hair. So,
yeah, I hadn't picked up on that. And that's interesting because we know the story here was that the baby was fussy and the wife said, go to the car and get some formula. And when this individual went outside is, when he was struck down. So, but I never made a connection if he was perhaps somebody that was, speaking at the funeral. I'm not sure.
Landon Brophy says, to be fair, if I was in charge, no way I'm asking him to take off the mask or put down the beer. Is that a beer that he's holding?
Yeah, it's a Corona. I mean, it could be water in the bottle, but it's a Corona bottle.
I'm sure. So they've got beer, perhaps. And what is this with the balaclava and everything inside at a funeral? That's weird. What's with the blue?
Yeah, it's definitely a cultural, I don't know.
It looks like it could be the Crips.
Yeah. Well, they did say that the gang task force did report to the building. And so I think there are some thoughts along those lines.
The Crips and the Bloods. The deadly incident took place while a funeral service was being held in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints meeting house. Police said the shooting is not believed to be a targeted attack against the faith. Police believe some funeral attendees got into a dispute, which prompted the shooting. Several people were detained and questioned, but none have been arrested as of Thursday morning. Now Monday evening, still nobody's been arrested, apparently. Red said some people are being less than cooperative with investigators, and I'm guessing that's all the witnesses. He urged anyone with information to call Salt Lake City's non-emergency line at 801-799-3000. That number, once again, in case anybody in our audience happens to know anything, please call this number as well, 801-799-3000. Then Friday, January 9th, 2026, this report comes out. The family of Sione Vatuve, the 38-year-old father who was fatally shot outside of a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints meeting house, spoke out publicly for the first time. That's his family. Since Wednesday night shooting, they described a smart and loving man who was on the path to turning his life around. And when the family of somebody says that, you know exactly what that means. Vatuve was shot and killed after attending a funeral on Wednesday evening. 8 people in total were shot, 2 fatally. 5 other people are being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. Police do not have anyone in custody and have not released new details or identified suspects. Christina, Vatuve's wife, was not at Wednesday's funeral, saying her husband told her not to go. Yeah, don't go to the funeral. It might be dangerous. You stay here, I'll go. And Christina understood it the same way. She says, I would have been there. I never left his side. I feel like this was his way of looking out for me, said Christina. So I think this was not completely unforeseen or unanticipated. I'm not saying that he's the instigator, but obviously there was something that was looking like it was going to go down at the funeral. Now, this thing on the right here, Rebecca, do you know what that is?
Yeah, this was put out by the wife of the deceased, and it was sort of instructions for the people attending the funeral. You know, don't do this, don't bring this, make sure you clean up your trash, you know, respect the meeting house, you know.
She would have 2 taco trucks in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And
So
don't
it's
bring
just
any
fun.
alcohol inside.
Yeah, things like that.
Wait a second. I think this guy did not get the memo. What the hell is a guy doing with alcohol inside a Mormon church?
I don't
Rebecca?
necessarily think it was a Mormon church that night. I think it
Who's
was
in charge?
well, and this is a question that even the broader Christian community watching this happen is asking.
Who is in
So,
charge? This is
yeah.
crazy. Where's the bishop?
Yeah, I saw pictures of it, looked like church leadership there, but I wonder if there's a point where events take on a life of their own and perhaps leadership is not equipped to be in control, if you
Maybe because
understand
you
what I'm
said the
saying.
bishop was present, at least at some
Right.
point.
Right. But I'm saying I think sometimes maybe LDS leadership may not be equipped to deal with a scenario like this.
Do you think the gangs
And
are taking over some buildings?
you know, I'm not going to say that out loud. I'm saying that the leadership may not be equipped to deal with some of these scenarios, and it
Because it
takes
looks
on
to
a
me
life
like
of its
maybe
own.
gangs are taking over some church buildings in downtown Salt Lake City. I said maybe.
Yeah.
I said looks like. Okay, police. Oh, less than cooperative. There's the hotline. Right, he's turning his life around. He tells her, don't go to the funeral. I know whenever I have a funeral at a Mormon church, I tell everybody, don't bring any alcohol inside. I didn't think, this is his wife, Christina. I didn't think with how he was moving, I didn't see his manner of death coming. In other words, she thought he was turning his life around. Apparently he was. But of course, that raises the question of what is he turning his life around from? And that's what I meant when I said earlier. And I think we all know what that means.
Right. He had
But-
been, as I understand it, in prison for 12 years and then had gotten out and was becoming a social influencer, speaking for, you know, you can make a difference, you can change, you can turn around, kind of a voice in the community for positive and for good.
Okay. I always knew it was a possibility. What? I always knew it was a possibility, but I didn't think that it would be with how his life was going on. I mean, this story and everything she's telling us gives every indication that this is not something that was a surprise. Not to her, not to him. I mean, obviously it's a surprise, but it's something that was not, that they could foresee happening. It was a possibility that they recognized. That's putting it better. She described her husband's growing devoutness and commitment to his faith. He loves it. He wakes me up in the morning to remind me to get up and get ready for church. Hopefully that's Sunday morning. Said Christina, we were on our way for sure. Vatuve leaves behind a 16-month-old son. By the way, this is a picture that you took, isn't it, Rebecca?
Yeah, but that is a picture from the other shooting that you're going to talk about.
I knew that.
There were 2 back to back. It was very confusing. And I was up really late all night, both nights. So yeah, it was very confusing.
I just want to jump in. The violence around LDS churches in the last 3 months has been more than the last decade.
Yep.
It is insane to me that we're in this moment where something, either it's just a bunch of coincidences or there's something going on, people feeling different, something happening differently. I don't know what it is, but I'm just stunned watching these stories unfold week after week.
Back here on this slide where we have the individual on the left uppermost that I mentioned before with the blue, look over here at all the other guys with blue on.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's supposed to signify anything. Christina's message for those responsible for her husband's death was this: they took away a really good person. He was just getting started, and now he's gone. Yeah. Anything that you want to say more about this? I know you just said something, Bill, but I give the floor to either of you. Rebecca, do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I've watched some commentary on this scenario from, like I said, the broader Christian community. And they are saying that the LDS Church does not seem to be equipped for this kind of a scenario, perhaps this type of a group. Other pastors have weighed in and said, when we have this kind of a group that wants to be part of our congregation, we set very strict rules, no colors, no alcohol, they basically make them strip all that aside to come and worship. And they said, they get the sense that this is the LDS Church is way out of their depth when it comes to this sort of thing. They don't have the right kind of security. They haven't set the right kind of parameters. They just don't know how to handle it. And I started thinking, with the huge push internationally, they're bound to run into scenarios that may be things that they're also out of their depth on. I really think they need to get
You
some
don't have
kind
to
of
reinvent the wheel on everything.
That's what I'm saying. I think they need to get some kind of outside consultation on how to secure buildings, to secure people, to, facilitate different kinds of people that may want to come in, that they still want to try to, be kind to and allow to worship. But the consensus kind of was, with a couple of different things I saw, is that other churches are far ahead in security and knowing how to deal with this, and that the LDS Church may just be naive in understanding what's really going on.
I will say, I think the apologists are not going to have as much fun with this one or give as much airtime as they did to the one in Grand Blanc, Michigan, where the non-Mormon went in and shot up the Mormon church and set it on fire because they were Mormons. Because in this case, it's the Mormons who are shooting it out in the parking lot.
Well, and Landon has a good point in the chat. I know he and I had been discussing this, that while the meeting house may not have cameras, unless there's an emergency, if somebody's shooting porn or any kind of security, anytime you see one of the apostles at a parade or out and about,
Yes.
They are surrounded by 6 to 10 armed security with a Moroni badge. I don't know if they're armed, but they take their personal security very seriously. But I really think they need to step it up into the 21st century and care about the members too. There's a lot they can do. There's a lot they can do.
And it's downtown Salt Lake.
Yeah. In the Days of 47 parade, the other one. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, well, thank you for reporting that. I know, and it's ongoing, and there'll be more coming out about it, and there's a lot that's left unsaid. I know people in the comments were like, it's obviously this and this and this, and, we just hope that there'll be some kind of resolution. Ooh, I think Bill is going to talk about the Brody. We're at the very end of the Brody voting, aren't we?
We are. The award ceremony will be Wednesday night on Mormonism Live at 6 p.m. You've got essentially another day and then maybe a night if you're one that stays up late to do the voting for the Brody Awards. Again, I'll put the links in the live chat as soon as I get done chatting here. I'll also put it in the synopsis of the show down below. But folks, if you haven't voted for the Brody Awards, please do that, and then tune in Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Mormonism Live for the awards ceremony to see who the winners are of this year's 2025 Brody Awards.
Yes, Bill and I will be hosting the episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's the first time ever. It's going to be broadcast. It's going to be broadcast live. So we're really excited about it, aren't we, Bill?
We are. This will be a great opportunity to give recognition to those creators, both who got nominated and the winner in each category.
Will you be wearing tuxedos? That's the question. I always love to see you guys dress up.
I will be. I can't speak for Bill, but this is an important occasion, and from my point of view, it deserves formal wear.
I will be dressed nicely.
There you go. Tune in for that, if nothing else. And I will say that, go through those Brody Awards and take screenshots. There are so many things in there you may not have heard of, a new podcast or a book or something. It is, if people say, well, what's in post-Mormonism that I can read or watch? There it is. You have hundreds, at least 100, ideas of where podcasts you can check out and books and everything. So anyway, take a look at those. And somebody said it's broting, not voting, because we're voting for the Brodies. It's broting. So anyway, we have one more day. I thought that was funny.
The brot is noted.
Yes, exactly. All right. This was another, it seems like I said, we are on a speeding train heading toward the brick wall of Mormon news, because there were so many stories this week. So I'm going to take this one, which was a huge announcement just a couple days ago. The church announces a new missionary approach on Temple Square. And we're going to talk about this because maybe not everybody is aware of what the old missionary approach was. And the subheading is adjustment intended to enhance the guest experience and increase mission opportunities as the church prepares for the Salt Lake Temple Open House in 2027. As soon as they said enhance guest experience, I, of course, thought back to the leaked plans in 2022 that I keep bringing up. In fact, here on the right is a podcast we had a couple months ago called Is the Master Plan Jesus Land? And we're talking about Temple Square and all these sort of random little small changes that they are making. But if you're following the master plan like I am, they're not random. These are all part of it. And there was a whole section on that exact phrase, enhanced guest experience. So they are putting this all together for when the world comes to Temple Square. And I think the master plan is Jesus Land, and we'll kind of talk about this. So let's see, Temple Square. Okay.
Is it true that one of the rides is going to be called the Pirates of the Comoros Islands?
Oh, you know what? It could be. And about 3 years ago, I put out a post. If you could make a ride at the new Jesus Land, what would it be? Oh my gosh, the Waters of Mormon log ride. People had the greatest ideas. So yeah, people are really funny. So this says the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is adjusting how sister missionaries serve at Temple Square to enhance the guest experience and increase missionary opportunities as the church prepares for, I would say, the open house and the Olympics. There are 2 major events coming up within the next, 8 years. So sister missionaries will continue serving on Temple Square. Now, let me just stop there and say that right now it is a Temple Square mission, only sister missionaries, and they only serve at Temple Square. That is where they're called. That is where they stay the entire time. Okay. So if you're called as a Temple Square missionary, you're kind of like a brand ambassador. You tend to be a bubbly, perky, cute person that's called there because of those attributes, and you're going to interact every day with people that come to Temple Square. So now, and they did put all these girls in a big room and tell them this, and if you look closely at some of the pictures I'm going to show from the event, I think you'll get an idea of how these girls may feel about this change. Now they will be assigned to surrounding missions, and their time will be split between teaching in an area in a surrounding mission and Temple Square. And this is what they do in 13 other visitor centers in the world. So basically, a girl who believes she was called to Temple Square to host guests and answer questions is now going to be sent to Ogden, right? To walk through neighborhoods and knock on doors.
Oh, how the mighty are fallen. Are they actually going to have to teach discussions now?
All of that. Exactly. And so what they actually did, it was interesting. This is the same time that they called 188 new mission presidents and companion, as they call it. They call the wife companion. And so they were all kind of together in this big thing, as I understand it. And they had all those mission presidents stand up, and then the girls could look over and see one of these is going to be my new mission president. So they're trying to make this transition easy. And basically, it'll all be over by July. That's when the transition is over and there are no more sister missionaries on Temple Square, and we're going to find out what's going to replace it. So
this way it will make it easier for them to meet their future husband.
Yeah, well, and this could be part of it because right here it's only sister missionaries. How are they going to unlock their hearts if it's only sister missionaries? Yeah. So Elder Rasband is the one that delivered the news, and because he chairs the Missionary Executive Council, he acknowledges that the sisters may be feeling a wide range of emotions. Okay. So let's look at a picture of some of these wide range of emotions.
It's sad, sad, and really sad. That's the
Yeah, and
wide
I will
range.
say that a lot of these sisters are international. So there's this huge international flavor, and all these girls get to meet together and work on Temple Square. So he says, Elder Rasband, I bear witness that Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ know you and love you. Okay, he's trying to make them feel better. And he testified that the Lord is hastening his work. Of course he is. That's important. This is the Lord's work. You are a part of it, says Elder Rasband. You are the pioneer sisters who will begin this now. Others will follow for years in this new model, but you are the first. So definitely trying to make them feel that although this transition may be shocking, that, the Lord is aware of them and that this is going to be, going forward, what needs to happen.
Isn't this another thing that we're hearing all the time, or maybe I'm hearing it with new ears, which is what you just had reported. Elder Rasband is saying, this is the Lord's work. You are a part of it. Yeah. We've had it screwed up until now, but now we figured out the way God really wants it to go.
Yeah, very interesting, isn't it? And let's read this next quote. He says, while this adjustment has been in the works for a long time, yes, it has. Leaked plans in 2022 and maybe even before that, right? And again, these leaked plans were based on user surveys of people that were on Temple Square, just tourists, and they answered questions. And the things that they said were, I don't understand anything about Mormonism, just walking around looking at buildings. I don't understand anything about the mission here. And I'm a woman or a minority and I feel uncomfortable. Those were some of the results of the survey. And so, they're trying to now reimagine and re-engineer the Temple Square experience to address some of these things that people were feeling when they came to Temple Square. It wasn't necessarily positive as far as the survey. So he says it's been in the works for a long time, but this was given to us from heaven and a user survey. He didn't say that. I added that. Sorry. Elder Rasband
trying to explain why it is that even though this has been going on, this judgment has been in the works for a long time.
And that is what I
given
said.
To us from heaven.
How do those two things exist in the same sentence?
He's
don't
arguing
understand
against
that.
himself.
Yeah, if heaven gave it to you, why would you not implement it right away? I have no idea. He
like
goes
from
on
the beginning
to say,
instead of, 2026.
Yep, he goes on to say, I want you to know that this work is led by the Savior, Jesus Christ. This comes from the Lord, and I can promise you it will be an incredible experience. So
high crust promises, easily made, easily broken.
But it very much reminds me of how they deal with towns where they're building temples. Even though we know it's been in the works forever and they're planning it out with architectural teams, they come and say, this is what Jesus wants. This is what Jesus told us he wants. We cannot change it because Jesus. So it's that same kind of thing. And I had to throw these pictures in here. These are AI. Let me say it again. These are AI. I made them 2 years ago when I learned from a faithful LDS source who is part of the VIP experience at Disneyland that top LDS leaders, male and female, had visited Disneyland, had taken VIP tours, and had specific questions about enhanced guest experience, ticketing, and people moving. So there you go. It's been in the works for a long time. Again, these pictures are AI. I don't want anybody to go after me, right? Okay.
I'm amazed at how easy it is for Mormon leaders to lie like that and say that even though they know it's been in the works forever, this is from the Lord. This is Elder Ballard, right? Elder Bassett, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This was given to us from heaven. This comes from the Lord. Do you understand that he's just telling you that to manipulate you? There's not a shred of truth in it.
Yeah, it comes from a survey and a trip to Disneyland, I think. But again, they're not wrong in wanting to enhance the experience when the whole world is coming. And I think that all of this started after they visited the Vatican. Do you remember that? And all the pictures from the Vatican? And I think they saw, the massive crowds that would visit. And in these plans, which they say they're renaming Temple Square to Mountain of the Lord, they said they want it to be a center of Christianity to rival the Vatican, right? So again, the church has said these leak plans were just something that somebody created, some kind of outside entity. But I've seen the survey and it's pretty specific. And I've also tracked the changes. So if you want to check out that Mormonish episode, we kind of go through some of the changes to date. So
we will see if their goal to make the Mountain of the Lord the equivalent of the Vatican is as successful as their attempt to make BYU the Harvard of the West.
Yeah, they always have to be the something of the something. Look at these pictures, the reactions of the
They're so happy.
missionaries.
They look very happy.
I'm not sure if that's joy. I don't know what that is. They look absolutely stunned. And we're going to get to a heartbreaking picture in a minute. So it says in the coming months, the sister missionaries are going to be reassigned. They reassure them that it's going to be from an apostle. They're not just going to be thrown out there willy-nilly to South Ogden. They're going to have a calling from the Lord where they're going to go. And they do mention the missions or, Ogden, Saratoga Springs, Salt Lake, just the surrounding areas. And then they'll spend some of their time on Temple Square and some of their time out in the field knocking on doors. And it says this transition is expected to be completed by July, which is in time for, at the time, is then the Salt Lake City mission will officially be discontinued. Okay.
So 6 months is it.
Yeah, that's it. It's over. But here is the phrase and the sentence that they put in there that tells me exactly what they're doing. It's just among all the different paragraphs. As part of the adjustment, some returned missionaries will be hired as part-time guides to work with the sister missionaries in enhancing the guest experience, which led me to create this picture of the pioneer princesses that are going to be at Jesus Land greeting everybody. So what they're going to do is they're going to have paid brand ambassadors. These are people who are returned missionaries who are also skilled in interfacing with the public. Maybe they are, theater majors at BYU. Maybe they're people that present themselves very well and very professionally. And then it says, basically what's going to happen when they need more missionaries on Temple Square, they will bring in certain sisters from these areas and they will be trained and work alongside these hired sister missionaries to be on Temple Square. So that's going to be a highly competitive thing to get, right? If you're out there in South Ogden and you want to go to Temple Square, you're going to have to be a certain kind of a person. You already are a certain kind of a person when you are called to be a temple missionary on Temple Square. You're a certain kind of a attractive sister missionary who can, interact with the public. They don't want just anybody is what I'm trying to say. So it's going to be very competitive, I believe. So any thoughts on that? Hired return missionaries to be the front facing people with all the visitors that are coming to town.
Do you think there's any goal to get this up and running by the time of the Olympics?
Oh, 100%. No, I even have a slide about that. It is about the open house and it's about the Olympics. With so many people coming to town, they can't just have well-meaning young sister missionaries. They have to have slick professionals like they have at Disneyland to interface and to be on brand with the message that is portrayed, right? You can't have somebody saying something awkward or not quite right. You have a script. So I even question if they really will bring sister missionaries in. You know what I mean? I kind of question that. I don't know.
When I used to go to church, I heard that the Lord used his Holy Spirit to make even those who could not speak very well still be able to get their message across. I think Brigham Young said something about that.
No, they can't
the
take
missionaries
a chance on
who caught him, right?
No, they can't take a chance on that. That's not going to happen. Sorry. Okay. It kind of goes on to say that in other visitor centers, this is how they do it. At historic sites, they have the sisters on those sites for 4 months and then out in the field. They definitely want them out in the field. I never put it together with the new announcement about dating in the field. I say that kind of facetiously, but kind of not. This really may be part of it. But it's going to be a big change. And they also talk about how the sisters are able to influence other young women to go on missions. So it's all kind of a big continuing cycle. Now, the Salt Lake Tribune are always really good at kind of, digging into some of the other details. And our favorite here, Tamara, she did a little piece on this that says LDS Church to dissolve Temple Square missions. And she pointed out that this, it began in 1995, and it's the only mission where women are in leadership roles. Now, they're not called AP, they're not called zone leaders, they're not called those kinds of things, but they were filling those functions in the mission. So now that's gone. 30 years later, those leadership roles for women are gone on Temple Square. So I thought that was a very interesting point. She says the International Sisterhood of Latter-day Saint women who, within the shadow of the patriarchal church's headquarters, were permitted to lead in roles that were reserved for men in other missions. And now that's gone. That's over. Women are not going to be doing that. And these are pictures that I just found online of the Temple Square missionaries. Like I said, this is the picture that I think is heartbreaking. Look at this young woman. To me, she's saying, but I was a Temple Square missionary. It's heartbreaking. you can tell that they expected their mission to be a certain way, and now it's going to be proselyting, pounding the pavement. So they go on kind of to say, let's see, what does she say here? Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
nobody expects God to change his mind so abruptly.
Well, no, but it's been in the works forever and then suddenly changed.
Oh, that's right. I forget.
Yeah, exactly. So some people that have served on Temple Square before say this is not great. It gave a lot of women empowerment, opportunities to meet with women from all over the world who were serving there, because they do want to have an international flavor there. And this woman who is a former missionary in Temple Square says it's a divided focus and it's going to dilute effectiveness in either place. But again, hired and paid brand ambassador kind of people, that is what they're going to go after. So the other thing that they didn't talk about, which I thought was interesting, were you aware that they have call centers in Salt Lake where sister missionaries man them? Yeah. Referring to the less visible proselyting performed by the Temple Square missionaries in call centers full of computers and headsets. There's so much that will be missed, like teaching houses full of people in Pakistan over the phone. So the fate of this is not clear, but this is part of what sister missionaries did. They got on the computer, they put on a headset, and they answered those "Do you want to know more?" calls.
So these sisters in this picture are also part of the Temple Square missionary sisters.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, so they're going to have to start going out to Ogden and other places.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a very different kind of a mission. And when you're called to Temple Square, you're called for a certain reason. It means that you're good at facing the public. It's kind of like when you used to be called to Moscow. A certain look of a person was called to Moscow, very attractive, to get people to stop and talk. So it was kind of like that. In answer to your question, I do believe this is because the Temple Open House on Temple Square, April to October 2027, they expect 22,000 new people every day on the ground there, walking around in that area. So I think they're getting ready for that. And also 2034, the Olympics, when the entire world will be there, and they really want it to be like a Vatican, a center of Christianity. So we'll see what happens. But I thought that was very
says, wait, what? They're teaching houses full of people in Pakistan? That does seem a bit suspect.
That, it does. That's interesting. A lot of ways that they get around being able to proselyte in person in countries where you can't is to do it online. And there it is.
Does that make it okay? Does that make it legal? I thought this was the church that insisted it always went through the front door.
The ends justify the means, and if people are converted, that's all that matters. Come on, RFM.
I thought we still believed in honoring, sustaining, and obeying the law, as it says in that article of faith.
Haven't you read the story of Nephi and Laban? Come on, RFM.
Yeah.
All right. Enough of my story. Do you guys have any comments on that really quickly? And then we'll go to RFM's last story.
Bill?
What do you think, Bill? What do you think about them ending this empowering mission for women on Temple Square?
I don't know how to articulate this, but it seems clear that the church is getting away. You've already pointed out they're getting away from like, hey, any missionary, if you trust the Spirit, you can get the message across and help people to believe. This is looking more and more like a corporation that's creating a sales team that's sending out its paid sales staff to try to convert people. It also is telling, again, want to claim it's revelation, when in reality, this was part of a large survey. And often revelation in the LDS church works through surveys and pilot programs. I have to wonder, like, what does the church look like in another decade? Mm-hmm. Again, if they keep saying the quiet things out loud, keep shifting the theology, keep making the kinds of changes they've made in the last 10 years over the next 10 years, and we get to the point where any place where the church is really worried about its public image, such as on Temple Square, instead of having regular missionaries, now it has a paid sales staff, essentially. The church is changing faster than I ever thought it would.
Yeah. 100%. Any final thoughts, RFM? And then we'll just move to your next story.
Okay, we're just continuing the story about the kid who lost his foot on that church-sponsored youth activity in Wyoming, I think it was. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints responds to negligence lawsuit after child's foot was amputated. The original lawsuit filed last, I think it was November when I covered it originally. And you have a certain amount of time to file your answer. The church has filed its answer. It is the defendant in this lawsuit. This from Amelia Hobson, January 6th, 2026. In November 2025, a lawsuit was filed against the church. The lawsuit was filed on behalf of two minors who have not been identified due to their age, after one of the minors had sustained serious injuries during a church activity in 2022. At the time of the incident, the minors were 12 and 14. The juveniles were participating in an activity on a boat owned by their ward's young women's leader. According to the lawsuit, while on the boat, the 12-year-old was feeding out a rope to an inner tube when the young women's leader reportedly accelerated. Due to the acceleration, the rope wrapped around the boy's left foot and severed it below the ankle. Ow. Can you imagine the forces involved and the pain? The young women's leader reportedly turned the boat off, but was unable to restart it because the engine flooded. So they're stuck out on the lake. The 12-year-old's brother, who was 14 at the time, and is the other minor involved in the lawsuit, called 911. Good. And then he applied a tourniquet to the injured leg. I hope this kid shows up at the back of Boy's life with his story memorialized there. With the help of others, attempted to paddle his brother to shore on the inner tube. Oh, my Lord. Like I said, the first time I covered this story, I want a piece of this lawsuit. This is a good lawsuit. But the church has to file something, and so they do. And it doesn't make them look good or very church-like, I've got to tell you. Because it was a church activity supervised by church leaders, the plaintiffs argued that the Church of Jesus Christ, the Mormons, had a responsibility and duty to the minors and breached that duty by failing to provide a safe environment and failing to properly train supervisory individuals. Yes, obviously. To me, anyway. On Monday, January 5th, the LDS Church filed a response to the initial lawsuit. While it admitted that some of its youth activities involve water sports and that the driver of the boat is in charge of some youth activities, yeah, like this one, guys, you know it, it denied that it breached any of its obligations or legal responsibilities. The church also admitted that the adults who organized the activity were leaders within the church. They kind of have to, don't they? But they're going to split straws again and say, however, they denied that the young women's leader had increased the dangers of boating. Yeah, it would have happened anyway, even if you'd had Captain Steuben at the wheel. Had increased the dangers of boating, or that any injury sustained were the result of acts, errors, or omissions by the church. Yet they have to file something, I understand, but this is not going to win the day. Based on Wyoming law's due care requirements, the church admitted, again, it owed a duty of care to the minors, but denied allegations that it breached that duty. Okay. 4 parts to a personal injury suit. There has to be a duty of care. There has to be a breach of that duty. There have to be injuries. And in between those two, there has to be approximate cause between the breach of the duty and the resulting injuries. They have to happen as a result of. What they're saying is, yeah, they had a duty, but they didn't breach the duty. Of course they did. Once again, you got to say something. But when you're a church, I'm just going to say this. When you're a church, this does not make you look very good. I get it about lawyers, and you got to, file something. You've got to make whatever arguments you possibly can. I know. But my gosh, representing the church, you're looking bad, and you're making the church look bad. The church is allowing itself to look bad. I'm just going to say this. This happened in probably the summer of 2022. It was that year. It's a boating accident, probably sometime in the warm months. It's Wyoming. Okay. This is not the first time that has been on the church's horizon. When it got filed in November of 2025, they have known about this forever. They've had attorneys for years going back and forth and back and forth. And I don't know. I have no idea if the other side has been absolutely difficult or unreasonable to deal with the plaintiffs here, that they wanted billions of dollars, and that's billions with a B, because they're certainly going to get millions for this lawsuit. Okay. I don't know. All I'm saying is that the church, you really should think about caring about your freaking members. Okay. This is a case where you have absolute liability. You know it. And you're going to end up paying. You know it. What it says to me is that the parties were not able to agree to a number, and so the lawsuit was filed. It's possible that's not the way it happened, and the church had no idea this was coming, but it's super unlikely in my experience. Because as lawyers, wouldn't you rather talk with somebody and reach a negotiated settlement without having to go through filing a lawsuit? Answer, yes, and that's why you almost always do that, where possible, as it would be here. So all I'm saying is that this is another instance where the church, rightly or wrongly, and I don't know if it's totally rightly or wrongly, but I do know that the church is once again in the news showing that it doesn't care about its members. Why not just make the kid whole? Why not just take care of the kid and the other kid and the family? Why not just do that, guys? Why not act like a church? Why act like a corporation with a bunch of bozo lawyers who are filing bozo answers that make you look so unchristian? As it makes it kind of, I don't want to say revolts me, okay, but it does make me throw up a little bit in the back of my mouth, this behavior by the church. Oh, also, you're going to love this part. In its response, the church argued that it bears no responsibility, see, and that there are inherent risks of activities like water sports that it cannot prevent. It also argued that the plaintiff's claims were barred by the volunteer immunity doctrine, which provides certain protections to individuals acting as volunteers. Okay. They're desperate. The response reads in part, this is what the church filed. The injuries are the result of a rare and unforeseen accident that happened in the absence of negligence or lack of due care by the defendant. So they could not foresee it, right? And yet, previously on the prior slide, the church is arguing the opposite, that it bears no responsibility because there are inherent risks of activities like water sports that it cannot prevent. So there it's foreseeable. Here it's unforeseeable in this argument. It also says that the church prays plaintiff take nothing by way of the complaint and asks the court to grant the defendant any relief that the court deems equitable. Now that just may be boilerplate language, and it probably is, and yet this is how it's being quoted in the newspaper. This is how we are telling you, and this is how it looks for the church to do this. And tell us in the comments and in the live chat, if you're watching this live and in the live chat, what do you think about that? How do you think that makes the church look? Just does it make it look like a church or something else? And a Christian church at that, which is what it's trying to look like. And that's that story, Rebecca.
And it's a cautionary tale to anybody that's a volunteer. There's a reason that the church calls everybody from a stake president to a bishop a volunteer. It distanced themselves from that. As my co-host Landon pointed out in the chat, he was a scoutmaster for 15 years. And they're like, oh no, you got to get more insurance if you're going to be driving those boys. It's on you. And if there's an accident or something happens, it goes to your insurance first. I don't think a lot of people realize this, that when they're just like, sure, I'll drive a gang of girls over to no, they will not have your back. It will be exactly like this. You are a volunteer and they will throw you, in front of the boat at a moment's notice because you're just a volunteer driving some kids.
Thank you for pointing this out, because this was not explicitly stated in the story, but what they're doing is saying, no, we as the church are not responsible. It's all these people's fault. So not only are they sticking it to the guy who lost his foot and his brother who went through everything, they're also sticking it to the members of the church who actually were responsible for it by saying, you, the cheese, stand alone and we're not going to help you.
Yep, they do not have your back. Go ahead, Bill.
This is an awful church.
You're creating a situation where if local leaders were wise and were paying attention, they would not want to put themselves in any place in within the church program where they're going to be the ones who are holding the bag while the church runs off. And RFM, to your point, this church has $265 billion and a kid lost his foot on a church activity. Just take care of it. Just do the right thing and take care of it. By turning your back on him, by turning your back on the leader, you have essentially showed your true colors, which is your bank account is really all that matters to you.
And another great point was made. I can't remember who made it. I just want to underscore it. which is if you are a member of the church, if you are asked to help out in any capacity whatsoever, and we're not talking about CSA now, that's a totally different dynamic with the church. But if you screw something up and somebody loses their foot or gets injured in some way because of your negligence, the church is going to throw you to the wolves and say that they're not responsible at all. So you might want to take that into consideration the next time you say yes when the church asks you to help out with an activity.
Yeah, and I think the church's policy is, we're not going to settle anything or give anybody anything because then everybody will want some. Don't you think that is possibly it? We just,
Well, there is a
we
foot
don't pay
gone here, and I
ransom,
would think
right?
that they must have had a number where they would have settled it.
I feel like off the books, maybe there is. And I think maybe you're right. But it's interesting how, the standard member, and I didn't think about it either, thinks about liability. I remember the first time I ever thought about it, I had a family member who was a young women's leader in Southern California. And she was saying, yeah, I'm supposed to drive 8 girls in a van to a youth conference across state lines, but the girls aren't citizens. They're here. And she said, is that okay, do you think? And I remember going,
Nothing
that
could go
could
wrong.
put you in a huge, I know they're your young women and I know that's awesome, but you're driving them, and so she was wrestling with that, but the fact that they would even ask her to do that. So, there are scenarios where you're like, I don't know if this is really the best thing for me, but you're kind of taught not to look at that. So
I know that people, again, I know the church wants to protect itself against frivolous lawsuits.
yeah.
On the other hand, I don't think people are lining up to lose their feet in boating accidents in order to get money from the church.
Yeah.
A kid lost his foot in a boating accident on an LDS church activity. If you don't again, you showed your true colors in the way that you're handling it. RFM, Rebecca, if the three of us were the first presidency and one of our underlings walks into the office and says, hey guys, I have to let you know over here in this place in the church, this accident happened. Here's what happened. We would just all three immediately go,
Yeah.
Take care of it.
Whatever they need.
You know what we would do, Bill?
Yeah.
We would go out there.
Yeah.
We would visit the family.
Yeah.
We would check up on the kid, and we would make sure that they were satisfied, made whole.
But financially, there would be just no ifs, ands, or buts. Did it happen on activity? Yes. Is it a leader's fault who is handling this activity? Yes. Let's not even debate it. Just figure out what is going to make some sort of equivalent to what this kid has lost, and just make it right. We're going to get it back in interest in the stock market in the next 2 weeks.
In positive press, although we shouldn't be doing it in order to be seen. Sometimes word leaks out, but you don't do it yourself.
You would get it though. You would get positive press. So
Yeah,
do you remember
absolutely.
the little
You wouldn't be
boy?
getting this crappy press.
Yeah. Do you remember the little boy who lost his life also this summer? Or was it the summer, drowning in a boating accident at a church activity? And I didn't ever hear if they, were trying to get, if there was anything like that. But, these things do happen. And it also makes me think, even going back to another story, you said, show up. Would you show up for these people? We had covered Lesotho, right? Where they didn't show up. That was an accident in Africa. I do question, will they show up for anything having to do with the Tongan ward? They are right here, and something did happen in their building. It is interesting to watch what they will show up for and what they don't. So to keep an eye.
Very good.
All right. Any more on that? That's really sad. That poor little boy. But his brother, a hero, honestly, a hero, but probably completely traumatized.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I'll tell you, when I was 13, I used to read Boy's Life, and you'd read the dramatized, and it was kind of like a comic book or graphic novel, that one page, wasn't it? Or am I thinking of Pedro? Anyway, regardless of that, at the back, they would have an account of some Boy Scout who saved somebody's life. And it was a huge thing. And I know that I often read those and thought ruefully, why can't I be lucky enough to be walking along the side of a lake and see someone out in the middle drowning?
It's not too late. I know you walk by a lake every day.
Yes, for that reason.
You can still end up, maybe not on Boy's Life,
I'd
but
probably
on
go
grown
down
man's
myself
life.
halfway to the middle.
Yeah. Yikes. All right. I think we have just two more quick little stories. I wanted just to make sure to cover this. I love President Uchtdorf for various reasons. And I've titled this President Dieter F. Uchtdorf is back in the saddle. And I don't think I can explain to you guys how popular he was back in his heyday with women. I've told this story before, but in the ward that I was in my must have been my 40s, I'm guessing. Yeah. They said, we're going to make a book of quotes from church leaders. Everybody bring your favorite quote from a church leader, and we're going to put it in this bound book, and we're going to give it out to all the sisters. So just random, whoever your favorite church leader is, bring us your quote. So everybody did that. They submitted it. Next week, the president gets up. She goes, okay, all we got were quotes from President Uchtdorf. Every single one of you submitted a quote from President Uchtdorf. There has to be somebody else that you're inspired by. You have got to mix this up, sisters. And we're all like, we can't help what resonates with us, right? And so it's been interesting to watch what happens to him. Somebody that, I kind of think of as like a black sheep, maybe a forward thinker, somebody with different ideas. It's been interesting to watch. So the headline is President Dieter F. Uchtdorf is named as the acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Now you become the acting president if the most senior apostle, who would be the president, is in the first presidency and has other duties, and that's Elder Eyring. So he, as the next senior apostle, is the acting president, but this does give him again, back in the saddle, the title of president, because they worked really hard to take that title away from him and make sure that nobody used that. And I'll just kind of revisit this a little bit because I think it's interesting. Look at this picture. I mean, come on, look at that picture. He's not.
You like that picture?
I love that. I'm telling you, women, they get palpitations when he would, for one thing, he had all his hair. That was amazing, right? He was a pilot and he never let you forget it. I mean, come on.
Women like that?
Apparently some do. When you compare it to the other body of gentlemen that you have to listen to and look at for conference,
yes.
He stands out. You have to admit.
Is the quote you picked from Elder Uchtdorf too?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course it was. It was one of the few times I went to Relief Society. I think they asked me to play the piano.
Did everybody say doubt your doubts?
Well, no, this was long before that. And that is a problem. He is the one that said that.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of feel like he was blinking when he said it, like maybe they made him say it. I don't know. I'm still willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Anyway, it says he's the acting president now. He will direct the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, which is the second highest presiding body in the church's governance under the first presidency. The primary responsibility of the members of the Quorum of the 12 is as a special witness of the name of Jesus Christ in the world. And I tried to do a little research onto when that changed, because it used to be a special witness of Jesus Christ. And I found a post by you, Bill, on a Faithful Latter-day Saint Reddit sub from 10 years ago, where you were, getting into the weeds with what it meant to be a name and the name of Jesus Christ. And anyway, it was interesting to see, but that's what they do. They witness to the name of Jesus Christ. Now, what happened exactly? Do you guys remember when President Uchtdorf was in the first presidency? Do you guys remember this? There
Is this a real picture?
Of course it's a real picture.
Is Elder Uchtdorf sitting on something? Because otherwise, Elder Eyring is freakishly tall.
Well, okay, do not do that to me again.
Why doesn't he have a pitchfork in one hand?
I don't know if he's sitting on something, but it is the real picture of the first presidency under President Monson. And he was indeed one of the counselors. And then, of course, I have juxtaposed that with someone else who might be a little jealous of Uchtdorf's popularity, because he was the one that was getting his quotes in the books by all the women, right? It was not President Nelson. So as soon as President Nelson became the prophet, for only the second time, right, in modern day history of the church, someone was taken out of the first presidency. The other person was Hugh B. Brown, and he was taken out because he dared to say, that priesthood ban thing, I think we should probably get rid of that. And instead they got rid of him.
And look at President Eyring. My gosh, he stayed in there forever. He hasn't been taken out of the first presidency.
He's never been removed.
Honestly, isn't he the first person you take out if you became the president?
Yeah, well, I think that President Nelson was looking for like-minded individuals. I feel like perhaps he wanted Dallin H and not President Uchtdorf. So at this point, I
got to say, by having Eyring in church leadership for this many years, the church has spent a lot more on facial tissues.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, that explains some of their stock options.
Anyway, so what happened to poor Now, Elder Eyring, once he was back down, he was put in charge of curriculum or something like that. But I will say there was an audible, oh, from people. He kind of just fell off the radar. And then there was this very interesting thing in the style guide, right? Which is letting people know when you write and write about quotes from different church leaders, how you are to refer to somebody. And, it's very specific. It says, when you introduce a quotation from a living general authority, you give the title of his current position rather than the title he had when he held it. So, if President Nelson said something when he was a bishop, you would say President Nelson. And I know that I talk about this all the time, but look at this little addendum. It says, however, when introducing a quotation from Elder Dieter F. Uchtdorf, give the title he held at the time he made the statement, okay, at the time, because he was a president, then not a president. However, somebody pointed this out to me in an article just last week before he was made acting president. Here is a quote from Elder Uchtdorf, right? And it says in the citation, Elder Dieter F. Uchtdorf of the Quorum of the 12, then the second counselor of the first presidency. So right there, they're disregarding their own rule of what they're supposed to do. They will do anything to continue to call him elder, right?
But it's not a legalistic church.
No. But anyway, none of that matters whether, you have this little thing. And I'm going to be curious if they remove this, because now he is a president. There's no other way to look at it. And not only is he the acting president of the Quorum of the 12, but this is very interesting. And I'm sure you guys have kind of looked at this, maybe not this specifically, but things like this. This is by Zelophehad's daughters, who kind of crunches these numbers. And there was a big juggernaut to President Uchtdorf becoming the prophet. Do you know what that juggernaut was?
I don't know. Was it like a juggernaut?
Yes, it was Elder Holland, because they were the same age. And as long as they were there, he was there. It was kind of unlikely, really.
So health doesn't get factored into this.
Yeah, no, not health, just age at this point. Right. So this is a graph showing how likely it is that, of course, you can see the Bednar arc right there because he's very young. But the fact that President Holland has passed away means that there's a very large chance that President Uchtdorf will be the actual president of the church. And this graph shows it even more. So prior to Elder Holland passing away at 85 years old, President Uchtdorf had a 39% chance of becoming the prophet, and he would have been it for about 4.6 years. Again, this is based on mortality tables. I mean, there are, there's divergence. Look at, oh my gosh, President Nelson. But this is prior to President Holland passing away. Look at the number now that President Holland has passed away, a 59% chance that within the next 3 years, President Uchtdorf will be the prophet, and he will be able to be the prophet for 5.2 years. So that's kind of encouraging. He may actually be the actual president. And I actually predict like Nemo did, I think he might be the president this year or next year.
I think he's going to be the prophet come Christmas.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be sooner than later. But anyway, interesting. If you want to freeze on that, when you guys watch this back and look at it, it's pretty fascinating, how it all goes. And then you look at just the spaghetti of all the younger apostles. It doesn't even matter if they're just, but interestingly, as my co-host Landon said on Mormonish, if they were to call a 40-year-old man right now, he would be the prophet. Right there, that gray line, making an upward trajectory. It's all about who outlives whom.
I just want to say, it does make me nervous. The big giant bar for David Bednar.
Yeah, no, if you go to the next graph for Bednar, his chances improved too, but he has a 78% chance of being the prophet for 9.4 years within about 7 years. Yeah.
He's going to rule for an entire generation.
Yep.
Then it'll be Susan's turn to shine.
I hope so.
She deserves something.
But again, anything can happen because God rules by taking out the current prophet if he doesn't want him. So anything's possible. But yeah, freeze on that, you guys, after the fact and kind of take a look at this because it's great data. And again, it's before President Holland passed away, and then, chances kind of increased after. So it's interesting.
Very interesting.
Yep. And that's all I have. And I think you have one more story about, oh my gosh,
I said,
2 nights in a row where there's something go on and there's a church building right there in the center of it and you don't know why.
This was a huge deal. Was it you who was sending me stuff on this? Was it
Yeah, because
Saturday night? Was it Friday
again,
night?
yes, somebody was sending me all this, and it
It's
was
Friday night.
not in the regular news yet. In fact, the video that I was sent, which was a live feed, news stations were saying in it, "Hey, can I borrow this for the news?" There was nobody there yet.
Mhm.
And it was happened right next to a stake center or a meeting house. And so they were kind of mobilizing over by the meeting house, which is why I have pictures of, but huge, like 47 police cars, an armored car. I mean, it was a big deal. And it was just 2 nights after the shooting in the Tongan ward. So,
Yeah, and they had such a massive police response, and I was, texting it to my daughter who lives in Ogden, and she didn't know anything about it. I guess
oh,
she
wow.
was, far enough away, but massive, massive response to this, making people think, "What the heck is going on?" And it was bad enough, 2 people got shot. It was in South Ogden. A man was arrested Friday and accused of shooting 2 of his neighbors in South Ogden late Thursday. So it was on the 8th, allegedly because I think that's right, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th
Yeah,
is
that would have
today.
been the very next night. That's right. Because I stayed up 2
Thursday.
nights in a row, like having to get out of bed, throw on some clothes and go, oh my gosh, I'm making a short. There's something else happening.
Yeah, it just this was published the
Yeah.
following day.
Yeah.
Allegedly because they simply walked outside their house. James Joseph Rios, 45, was booked into the Weber County Jail for investigation of 2 counts of attempted murder. The shootings prompted a mass response from police and firefighters. 2 people in the neighborhood were shot prior to the arrival of South Ogden police, who then came under fire. They call it ambush fire, police said in a statement. They were not physically harmed and immediately called for assistance. An officer responded about 10 p.m. Thursday to the area of 1372 East 5800 South, following a report of multiple individuals being shot at or near the listed address, according to a police booking affidavit. Upon arrival, the responding officer reported that additional gunshots were fired in the officer's direction. The officer observed a female running from the area, at which time several more shots were fired in her direction. At least 35, I can understand why there was a mass response. At least 35 police cars from various departments, along with numerous fire and paramedic trucks, converged at the scene. 2 drones were deployed, a police dog was present, and law enforcement officials in full tactical gear walked around the scene. Police say Rios fired multiple rounds. The 2 shooting victims were transported to local hospitals, and Rios was eventually convinced to surrender and was taken into custody. James, that's the guy, James admitted to firing multiple rounds from inside his residence toward neighbors who lived across the street. The suspect stated he fired at the neighbors because the neighbors exited their residence. They walked out of their house after the suspect had warned them to remain inside. The suspect admitted he knew he had shot his neighbors and watched the male neighbor fall to the ground and then shot the wife, who was also outside, the affidavit says. The suspect further admitted to firing additional rounds from inside his residence after law enforcement officers arrived on scene. According to the arrest report, police say a rifle was recovered inside Rios's residence. There's a picture of him getting arrested after he surrendered to police. And that's that story. Any comments from you, Rebecca and Bill?
Yeah, that picture that you had with the other story, that shows why this is relevant to Mormonism. When the scanner, the police, the first address they gave was the LDS building. So everybody thought, oh my gosh, is this happening in an LDS building again? Then it turned out to be like right there, but the police kind of parked there. And the picture from way back on the other one, the other shooting, where there's a SWAT team walking in front of a building, and it is an LDS building. Like they were around it. They were, kind of taking cover behind it. It was literally right there. And so, yeah, that's it right there. Yep.
That's why I
exactly.
confused it, was because it was in front of the church.
Yes, it was in front of the church.
But you
Exactly.
took this.
Yeah, I took it from the video. I was watching a live feed. And in fact, I sent you a couple screenshots like at 2:00 in the morning. And I
Oh,
said,
you
is
didn't
this
take
the
this
church
actual
building?
picture.
Huh?
You weren't outside taking this actual
Oh,
picture.
no, I couldn't go on site. No, I leave
Oh,
that to Lauren Matthias.
Oh, okay.
I do it all from laying in bed with watching a live. Yeah. But I did send it to you, RFM. And I said, do you think this is the church building? And you said, yeah, look at the windows, so you kind of helped me see. And
Yeah,
then
there's a
later you
picture.
could see the police cars all around. But for a while there, a lot of people were like, another shooting at an LDS, building. Of course, you could say, yeah, there's so many buildings all over Utah. Where are you not going to have an incident by it? But I just thought, given that the night before, you'd have the other thing, and here you have all this presence right there surrounding the church building in the area, it's scary. It's really strange. The church building does need some kind of security or something, or cameras. I don't know, something.
Yes, very good. Bill?
Not necessarily on anything on this story. It happened outside of a LDS building, but the violence, again, same thing. All the violence that's happening, not just in the stories we're covering, but happening in our nation. It just seems, I don't know, I'm a little overwhelmed lately with all that's going on, and we've got to figure out some way to get back to a place where we can agree to disagree and still be kind to each other.
It's the last days, Bill.
It's the last days. They've always said that. It's always the last days, but I think this time it really is. I think I had one more quick slide, and then we can go into what's upcoming. This was just kind of heating up on social media right here. I'm calling it Bishop's Got a Bish. And this is, I don't know if bish is a verb, but I think it is. I'm going to use it as a verb. This is a young lady on TikTok who's dancing around saying, this is me getting denied my temple recommend because my bishop went and kind of stalked me on TikTok and spotted me drinking chai tea and said, I saw your social media. You're not getting a temple recommend. And
so this gal is not somebody out there being critical of the Mormon church or its leaders, God forbid. Is she?
No, I don't think so. She said
that happens to be drinking chai tea and whatever else she's doing.
Yeah, probably like me. I mean, going, woohoo. If my bishop were to call me and go, I saw you on the Mormon Newscast, and the only complaint I have is you're drinking a hot drink. I don't know if that would be the only complaint, but it was interesting, the response very quickly. A lot of people were like, oh my gosh, how inappropriate. He's stalking her, creepy bishop. He's looking at her social media. Somebody else said, good on that bishop. We are tired of bishops just turning a blind eye when people say, it just doesn't work for me not to drink coffee. Garments just don't work. We talk about this all the time, right? The 30-somethings, they can get away with everything. So somebody said, good on this bishop. He's actually laying down the law. You cannot drink tea. You are drinking tea. You do not get a temple recommend. So it was funny to see some of the different reactions. But
when people go and put videos, they create videos, they put them up for everybody in the world to see. I always have trouble associating the word stalking with looking at that.
Yeah, but if you're actively looking for a person, they're coming in from a recommend, you're like, I'm going to see what she's up to. Maybe that might be considered creepy. I don't know. You know
what the best new tool that police have discovered in the last 25 years for prosecuting criminals?
Facebook?
Yes.
Yep, everybody's got to put it all out there. Look at me.
I mean, that is a step. You're not going to skip that. That's going to be an early step whenever you're investigating anybody.
Yeah.
Look at Facebook. See what they're doing, what they're saying about themselves.
There have been many, including some of my own
clients, who have hung themselves by what they said.
Yeah, you have to look people up and see what are you up to. You have too many cat pictures, then you're a little strange. I have a lot of cat pictures. All right, let's move on. We are at the end here. We're going to talk about what is coming up next this week. There's always a lot of fun stuff. Brody's.
I put that in there again because it's so important.
Okay. Yep. And remind everybody, your show Wednesday is.
Yeah, I mean it's in there because Wednesday night. Go ahead, RFM. Sorry.
Wednesday at 6:00, and it's the first time we're gonna do a great show. It's not going to be exactly like the Golden Globes or the Academy Awards, but I do want to give people the option that if you win, to have a link that you can come on the show. It'd have to be right after your name was announced, pretty much, and make an acceptance speech. Although, if you want to do that, I want to make that available to you.
So are you going to tell people ahead of time you will know and say you might want to just wait?
Nope.
Or you're going to make everybody hopeful.
They would have to wait, just like
at the Oscars.
Like at the
you're like, please be my name. And then you click and you jump right in.
Yeah, you'd have to. You'd have to wipe away the tears,
Yeah.
of gratitude.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. All right. So that's Wednesday night, regular time, 6 p.m.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
I might have to tune in. We'll see what happens.
If you haven't voted yet, go there and vote now.
Oh, yep. Do we have that link in the chat or?
It was put in the live chat, and it's also down below in the YouTube description for the video. Yep.
Okay. Yep, that is. So it's not too late to vote. Go and do that.
If anybody doesn't know, that's a picture of Fawn Brody. She wrote No Man Knows My History, a definitive and early biography of Joseph Smith, published in 1945. That's why it's called the Brody Awards.
And I'll just say, too, the image we had of her, people always want to speak bad about AI. The picture that we have of her is really small, and when you make it bigger, it's super fuzzy and you can't see her very well. I took the image, put it through AI, and said, please increase the resolution of this, improve the clarity. And as you guys are going through the other shows this week, I'll go find the original picture, and you can just see them side by side. I think it's a beautifully well done image of what it looks like. And the photos that we have of her don't do her justice. And so, at least in this instance, I think this is one of the things that AI is capable of. We used it before RFM when we did images of church leaders that we talked about on Mormonism After Dark. And it has the ability to take lesser quality photos, images of people from long ago, and often can make them sort of modernized photo of them. And you get the chance to sort of see what they really looked like. And I think, at least to that degree, AI is really helpful.
Yep. No, I'd be curious to see the other picture. I know I've seen it before, but yeah, this is such a pretty picture of her. I just love this. So, Mormonish, of course, every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. I know there's been a lot of talk about the witnesses. You guys have done a bunch of stuff about the witnesses. I know Colby's gone on the Murph to talk about the witnesses. We had Ganesh on to talk about what I consider the OG witness. And it's a witness that you don't really find in your LDS curriculum in Come Follow Me. And that is Isaac Hale. And he saw everything up close and personal from the absolute very beginning. And he has signed affidavits. He wanted to get his witness and his testimony and his story out about his son-in-law that he was watching closely because he lived right there on his property. And for some reason, you don't hear a lot about that. So we're going to go through that with Ganesh, Isaac Hale, the first witness. And of course, Isaac Hale is Emma's father. So he knew Joseph since he was what did he call him? A saucy lad, right? Talking back to his dad, Joseph Sr. So this will be interesting. And that's Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Let's move on. Ooh, this was a good one, huh? This is already aired, right?
Yeah, it premiered on last Saturday, still available for viewing. This is me and Colby with my big head. I didn't have room for him in the thumbnail. Sorry about that, Colby. But anyway, why I believe in Mormonism, it is responding to Austin Fife's chapter about how it was, and I'm not kidding, how it was that he left the church briefly in his mind. He stopped believing in God. Then, using just common sense, he reconfigured a system of religious thought that exactly matched Mormonism. What are the odds?
So that's already out, and everybody can check that out on Mormon Discussions. And then we talked about the Brodies will be Wednesday, and then Friday, as usual, the most rockin' show out there in the post-Mormon world, Mormonism After Dark.
I think we're going to have to be talking about the Brodies on Friday somewhat.
See, there's where you might want to have some people on, the good, the bad, the ugly, the defeat.
No, only the good, only the winners.
Oh, only the winners. It'd be fun to have people who didn't win on. Who could go?
The people who don't win don't get to make speeches.
I don't know. Throw somebody a
What
bone.
award show do the losers get to make speeches?
I would like to start an award show where the losers get to make speeches.
There's going to be a lot more losers than winners. That's going to be a long show.
It's true. You can just say, call in if you're a loser. I think that would be perfect. Oh, look, there you go. Perfect.
There's the before and after on Fawn Brody.
Yep.
Yeah, that is a lot more. Anything you do to colorize it?
It's very close.
I could do that. I could have it colorize it.
Let's call you Ted.
All right. Just don't call me late for dinner, I guess is the cliche that gets said. All right.
Ted Turner.
Ted Turner. Oh, those colorized movies. Oh, awful. An abomination. All right. I think we did it. Does anybody else have anything else to say about anything we've covered? It was a lot. I feel like it was kind of a fire hose this week. I was thinking maybe it'll be less, but there were just, the hits keep coming. As they say, the church keeps putting out these major changes. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't even know if we can predict.
But there might be a story on the Brodies on the next newscast.
That's true. We should cover it. Absolutely. It's very relevant. Yep, it is. So, all right.
If I win, we'll make it into a story. Otherwise, we're not going to cover it.
There's bound to be some drama. I'm sure there will be. So yeah, everybody tune in Wednesday night for sure. That's going to be really good. So, and everybody dress up, right? It's like attending the Oscars.
Well, yeah, I'll be in a tux. Absolutely. I guarantee.
You will be in a tux. I know. And on your best behavior because, it's Oscar night, Brody night. So, All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We absolutely love putting out this content for you guys. And I have to say, we do monitor your comments all the time. Like, I get a lot of information and I try to bring it into the show. So I like to think this is kind of a crowdsourced sort of a thing, because you guys are super smart and you know a lot. And so keep those comments coming, because we are paying attention. And, lots of times we'll say, I can't remember. And I'll look over to my right where the comments are streaming. I'm like, oh, it was this. So I sound a lot smarter than I am just because I'm reading your comments. So thank you for participating. And thank you, RFM. And thank you, Bill. And we will see everybody, hopefully, at all the things we just detailed that are coming up this week. And then again on the newscast next Monday. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.